Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today for the Legion M webinar. Really excited to have so many awesome fans out there tuning in to learn more about Legion M and their current round of investing. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Chris Lestrino. I'm the founder and CEO of KingsCrowd. Basically, we are a rating and analytics service for the online private market. So it's wonderful that we have WeFunder and we have Legion M listed on WeFunder, but there are over 46 platforms where people can go and invest in startups. So we try and find and vet and rate the best startups out there to make your investing lives easy. So really excited to have you on here to learn more about Legion M and the team that's building it. They've done some really unique and interesting things in kind of the Hollywood movie space, and I'm excited to be able to share their story with you today. So with that, would love to kick it off with Paul and Jeff. Guys, would love to hear a little bit from you, a little bit about your background and why you're building Legion M today.
Sure. Happy to. Yeah. Thank you for having us, Chris. I'm Paul. I'm co-founder and CEO of Legion M.
I'm Jeff. I'm the other co-founder.
And Jeff and I have started 3 companies together. This is our 3rd one. We started off, what was it, almost 20 years ago. We've been working together for 20 years. We still get along, which is says something. But we started another company called Moby TV about 19 years ago. And that company, we had a lot of success with that. Then out of that company, we spun out another company. We had that go for a little while. And just 3 years ago, about a little over 3 years ago, we started Legion M with our mission is to unite entertainment fans to co-own our own studio, to back and produce movies and TV series that effectively have, better insight into the types of projects, but also have a built-in audience. And so we're really, the goal is to unite a vibrant and engaged community. And 3 years in, we're pretty excited about it. I mean, we're still a startup, still a long way to go, but it's been amazing so far.
Yeah. And we're a big fan, Chris, of you and just the whole equity crowdfunding sphere in general. Because for us, it's very fundamental. A lot of people look at equity crowdfunding as like, oh, this is a new way to fund a business.
Right.
But I think that's kind of missing the point. It's like a fundamentally new way to build a business where your investors and your owners are participants and your biggest customers get to participate in the upside. And so, for us, like our company would not exist without equity crowdfunding. And we appreciate you as one of the pioneers in trying to explain and demystify this space and help people just understand the risks and the rewards of getting involved.
Yeah, I mean, one of our goals is by doing this and kind of building our business that is, as Jeff mentioned, like kind of fundamentally pinned to equity crowdfunding. We want to redefine what it means to be a shareholder. Not only what it means to be an entrepreneur and how can you, disrupt and kind of have an impact on an industry that we love, but also, how can we change what it means to be a shareholder? Most of us own stocks, but we don't really get that involved in the companies that we own. We might kind of slightly favor them when we're going to the market or, these things, and we might kind of follow their news. But in our case, and especially as entrepreneurs with a company that's in its early stage, having a community of investors willing to support the company is a massive advantage for any startup. I mean, we've been there before. We've raised over $100 million with venture capital for our first company, and that was amazing. And we had, really good venture capitalists involved, but we never had that community of people that were kind of, on our side and supporting us to be successful.
No, absolutely. So I'd actually like to jump in on that point. I think one of the things that people haven't necessarily fully understood about your business is what separates you from any other, movie house, production house, whatever you want to call it, a Disney, an MGM. Why are you different and can create a different set of values that those organizations just can't? So I'd love to hear how you kind of look at that.
Sure. Yeah, you want to take that?
Yeah, sure. I mean, it comes down to this idea that a company owned by a large group of fans has fundamental competitive advantages compared to other entertainment companies.
Most studios are owned by Wall Street.
Yeah, Wall Street or individuals. And so there's a number of different ways that those advantages are manifest. And, you know, we're seeing a lot of them already. I mean, first and foremost, the whole idea, you know, a built-in audience is literally one of the most valuable things in Hollywood. If you look at Hollywood today and you look at the proliferation of superhero movies and sequels and reboots, the reason they do that is because Hollywood recognizes the safest way to make a movie is when you know that there's a core audience that's going to come out and see it. So they can produce Fast and Furious 18, and it doesn't even matter if the movie's good or not, because they know that there's a core group of people that will come out and see it. So Legion M is, in a lot of ways, based on that sort of foundation, that if we can get, you know, a legion of people that are going to come and see the movies, they're invested in the movies, you know, emotionally and financially, that it gives us a built-in audience potentially for everything that we do, which is incredibly powerful when you look at what it means to be able to kind of go outside of the box and to create new IP. And so
the next big franchise.
Our whole thesis is that, you know, we can create the next Fast and the Furious franchise because we've got a legion of people that are going to come out when the movie comes out. They're going to see it opening night. They're going to bring their friends and family. They're going to talk about it online because it's their film and they've been a part of the process the whole time. So I think going in, like, that was kind of the main thesis, is that, you know, a company owned by fans is fundamentally better than one owned by Wall Street. But we're finding that there's even other ways that maybe we didn't anticipate, you know, coming in. And a great example of that is Scout.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things, as Jeff mentioned, like, you know, having a built-in audience is really critical and it's a core differentiator. But there are a whole bunch of other areas where we feel like we can make smarter and better decisions by having the community involved. And so we call it our virtuous cycle, because in a way, this was what we wanted to enable. We call it opening the gates to Hollywood. We want our investors to get involved, have a voice, come out, be supportive, join our development meetings, be a film scout on our behalf, and come to Sundance and meet up with other investors and community members, and then help us make those decisions. And, you know, what we're learning is that by delivering on that promise that we've made, we're also adding so much value to the company. You know, the best example that we did this year, actually, and we're in the process of releasing a film, which is the culmination of this exercise, is we rolled out something that we call our Film Scout platform. The Film Scout platform allows everyone in our community to have a vote and to have some input into what movies do we want to get involved in. In this case, where we applied Film Scout, we went to Sundance. So 2 years ago, we had a film at Sundance, which was amazing. We went there, and it went on to do great things for us and has become one of our more successful projects, frankly. But this year, back just in 2019, we went to Sundance with the collective goal to buy a film, buy the rights to a film. A lot of people don't realize that Sundance is actually a film market. So a lot of those movies are being shown for the first time. They're premiering there, and they're being picked up by distributors. And so we have now a variety of different distributors that are very engaged and wanting to work with us. We went to Sundance with the goal as a hunting trip. You know, let's all go together. We host a lounge there every year, which is super fun, and people come out and join us, and we have free food and drinks, and we have sponsors that help pay for it. But this year, what we did is we took 117 of the films that were premiering at Sundance, put them into the Film Scout platform, let our community vote on that. We gamified it to make it fun, so it wasn't like a boring exercise. You went through and you saw two films side by side. You told us which one you liked best, but also you were making a prediction. And that part of it is really fun for the community, because that's something you'll be measured on. And we have a kind of stack ranking, leaderboard for our film scouts. But with that data in hand, you know, based on, all right, so there are 117 films, and, you know, for us going to Sundance, we don't want to just go to Sundance and buy a film that we think the Legion will like. We want everyone's input. But just being at Sundance and having we had over 45,000 votes on the platform when we got there, with data which is like really differentiating. I mean, what we're learning by talking to people in the industry, and distributors are calling us and saying, what's your data telling you? I mean, people don't realize that the films that go to Sundance, most of them don't even have a trailer. There's no Rotten Tomatoes score. No critics have seen them yet. There's very little data. And so there's really no indication of like how these films are going to do. And, you know, a lot of these $1 million decisions are being made by a small group of individuals doing their gut check. It's kind of like the, you know, if you ever read the book Moneyball, comparing kind of the data analytical approach to the just early scouts and smoking cigars and, you know, making a prediction on which kid's going to become the next, you know, MVP. And so for us, you know, we want the data. You know, we want the data. We've got the data. But the other component of Film Scout, which was really, I think, kind of mind exploding, is that we invite our community to come to Sundance, go watch movies, and file a field report, a scouting report. So when you're there, you know, everyone, of course, pays their own way. But once you're there, you find your way into, you know, movies, and you're at Sundance, you're watching movies. And when you do, you log in, you tell us what you think of the movies. So we not only have the data that says, 45,000 votes kind of guiding us towards these are the movies that sound interesting. We also have hundreds of people in Park City during Sundance watching movies and in real time writing scouting reports that tell us if those movies delivered on their promise. I mean, this is something this was kind of our inaugural year for Film Scout to like really, you know, put it to good use. We bought a film called Memory, The Origins of Alien, which I'm sure we're going to talk about.
We've got a trailer. We can show you later.
Yeah, we can show you that later. But I think it's one of the, you know, I mean, it's not the only example, but it's one of the best examples of how Legion M being owned by a community that has a voice can make smarter decisions in a space that, you know, frankly, you know, they're historically haven't used a lot of data to make these decisions.
So basically you're becoming a data-driven, you know, movie investment house in some ways. That in and of itself is really valuable. We actually had a question come from the crowd, which is, can you monetize that data? Would love to hear an answer on that. In addition to it, would love to kind of hear, you know, what are you hearing from industry execs who you're meeting with? What are they saying to that, with the fact that you can hand them a paper and say, check it out, like, we know these people are interested in this movie?
Yeah, it's funny that you asked that, because we literally had meetings in Hollywood last week, and I mean, people are salivating over this data. I mean, it's not an exaggeration when Paul says these decisions are often made by just a couple people. And if you think of the sheer magnitude of the Sundance problem, and that's a microcosm of the broader, you know, challenge in the industry. But, you know, if you are an executive at a film company going to Sundance to figure out what to buy, there's 119 films there. How do you even figure out what you're going to watch? You're going to be there for a couple days. You're going to have maybe a few people, boots on the ground. And like Paul said, there's no information available. Like you can find out who's in it, who directed it, you know, what they've done before. But beyond that, it's just buzz and rumor and innuendo. And so they turn to things like social listening, right? Where you're seeing like who of the talent, the actors in it are trending, you know, on Twitter. And that's a number, right? It tells you that, like, you know, this last year, one of the biggest ones was, what was it? Exceedingly Wicked, Shockingly Vile, the Zac Efron movie. And what do you know? Zac Efron is huge on Twitter, but that doesn't necessarily correlate to the success of the film. So beyond that, they've got just old school techniques. They can pay people to take surveys. They literally call people on landlines and ask them, have you heard of this movie? What do you think of this movie? Like, kind of the state of the art, you know, in the industry for getting the data. And then when you get to Sundance, you know, like Paul said, the ability to have hundreds of boots on the ground watching it so that you can synthesize opinions, as opposed to, you know, like when you wake up at like, you know, 10 a.m. in the morning to go see a screening and you had like a late night last night, like you're kind of like starting off, you know, that movie's starting off at a deficit.
You know, well, it's funny, you know, we're kind of Silicon Valley entrepreneurs that have entered the entertainment space. Our last company, you know, was also both companies have ended up being technology companies in the entertainment space. And for us, it just seems like really strange that we wouldn't that we would go to Sundance and make those decisions without data. And you know, having the nice thing about it is that our motto at Legion M is having fun can be good business. And this exercise of voting on films and playing this game and being on a leaderboard and then going to Sundance and getting a Film Scout badge, meeting up with your other co-owners, hanging out at a lounge on Main Street right next to the Egyptian Theater, going to see films and filing a scouting report, that's an extremely fun thing to do. I mean, we're not asking people to dig a trench or do some kind of detailed data analysis. We're saying, hey, you come to the movies, come hang out, enjoy Sundance, because a lot of people there are on vacation and really it's a bucket list for them. But do it at a completely next level, and then use that data. So by doing that, when our community does that, and increasingly every year we grow exponentially, but when they do that, they're adding immense value to the company that they own. And it's just, it's such
a wonderful virtuous cycle.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. Everyone's kind of bought in and on the same page for sure.
Right.
Yeah.
So one of the other things, I urge everyone to go read the piece. I thought it was really good. You have a piece on your website about how you plan to make money. You have all of these different revenue streams and ways that you can monetize what you're creating with this legion of investors. And one of them is around kind of this marketing strategy. And you did something pretty interesting with Tolkien this year. Can you tell us a little bit about the success you had, what conversations that's leading to, and why that was really valuable?
Sure. You want to take it?
Yeah, it's so Tolkien was the first project that we've done where we didn't actually invest in the film. And it was something that we tried. We have, like what we said earlier, we have a very Silicon Valley sort of approach, to agile development and experimentation and quickly trying things, which again is very counter. There's another great example later with Girl with No Name. But anyway, I don't want to get into that right now. But anyway, so, we decided let's give it a try. And I think what's really powerful from it is if you're standing, at a high level perspective is, here's a studio that's effectively paying us, to promote a film, right?
Yeah.
It shows it's a physical financial that you put a dollar sign next to,
Right.
They
put a value on
what we can provide to them.
What it means for Legion M to lean in on it.
Yeah, to get in on a project. And it was an experiment for them too. This is Fox. This is a division of
Fox
Disney,
Searchlight,
right? Which is the 800-pound gorilla.
Well, and as Jeff mentioned, one thing to just point out, we wanted to invest in the film.
Yeah.
But they're Fox. They don't need our money, and
it cost more in legal fees for them to take a check than we could have actually, afforded
they were
to
just
invest.
level setting with us. They're like, okay, we know you want to invest, and that's great. But we don't need your money. Let's figure out how to make this worth your while and get you guys engaged. And so we'll basically come up with a formula that they could agree to and that doesn't involve us investing. So for us, it's kind of interesting. It's almost like having an investment in a project with no downside risk, which is, our long-term goal, right? The long-term goal, as Jeff pointed out earlier, is the built-in audience and be able to hedge your downside risk. If you could go to Vegas and play the odds and not have any downside risk, you'd be there all the time playing those odds, right? And so in this case, it was an experiment for both of us, but it was a no-brainer for us.
Yeah.
Frankly, that, to get involved. And it was an opportunity for us to prove our value to Fox Searchlight, which is a company that we want to work with. And, to be honest, some of the best projects in Hollywood aren't looking for investors. And those are the ones that we want to invest in. Yeah. So we need to prove that we're worth having at the table, because if we're coming, and you're planning to, fund it yourself, or you already have your investors lined up, and we're saying, hey, wait a minute, we want in on this project. And they're saying, we don't need any more investors, but we're different. We're different because when we invest, we're gonna lean in, and that's a value that other studios are willing to pay for.
Yeah,
we bring a direct return back. So before we continue, I just want to mention, everyone, there is a section on your Zoom webinar where you could put your Q&As into. So literally just write them in, and then I'll make sure to try and get as many off of that I can as possible.
Do we have anyone moderating? Maybe we could post that link to the how we make money.
Oh yeah, I don't know if there's anybody from Legion M, but if they want to post in the chat,
feel free to put questions in there as well. But I will be tracking the Q&A section and happy to answer any questions that come in. Another thing that I did want to ask though is, so you talk about the fact that, maybe Fox and Searchlight, they don't need your money, but there are movies that do need your money, and you've made a few equity investments. So can you talk about those, what they look like? And, Mandy, for instance, I think did really well. Tell us how it did.
Well, it's worth pointing out that even those films, I would say, didn't need our money. Colossal, Mandy, Bad Samaritan, even Field Guide to Evil, we're all pretty much fully funded.
And we're still early in our company, so we're not writing multi-million-dollar checks or anything like that. And so for the amount of money that we're investing, I think, we're able to kind of wedge in on some things. I think it'll get even easier when we're writing big checks, and there's a model, and actually memory falls into this camp where, at a certain point in time, it'll be, this is a prediction, so we should just be clear that, obviously this is our goal, but our goal would be that we can obviously finance our own projects, and we do, mostly because we've ensured that the downside risk isn't that high, and we want to maintain all the upside risk. Now, there are also projects where, we'll want to diversify. Maybe it's a riskier bet, and we want to have multiple investors just so that we're not, taking on the whole burden of the investment. But yeah, the projects like Mandy is a great example. We invested in that project, fairly, we had started following it at its script level when it was in development with SpectraVision, Elijah Wood's company, and we really liked the script, and we were in the process of raising finance at the time. And in case you've seen the movie, it's a very unique movie. And so as it started shooting, I shot in Belgium, we were kind of following it. They showed us some of the footage from the movie, and we said, okay, look, we've raised our round, we're ready to make an investment. We made a relatively small investment. I think at the time it was one of our bigger ones, but it's still not millions of dollars. But what was really neat about the experience is we made that investment, and it got into Sundance, which was an opportunity for all of us to celebrate. We had announced the film. We put it in. It's the first film in what we're calling our Legion Midnight slate, because it's kind of a midnight movie. It's it's very much a midnight movie. It's been called the most midnight of all midnight movies. So, but we knew that, and so we just wanted to make sure that people understood that. We do want to make investments like that, but we don't want an investment like that to define who we are, because we're not only doing midnight movies. And this was a Nick Cage movie. It was actually, it wasn't it was like a middle range budget, but done really financially in a smart way with tax credits and a backstop and all these things that allowed it to kind of, have some success. And so when we were all there. We hosted the premiere party at Sundance with Nick Cage and got to meal with them. Our community was there. This was like one of our first experiences kind of all of us coming together. And it was just, there was another one of these bucket lists, like, okay, we're all invested in this film. We're all at Sundance, and it's premiering. And, it didn't hurt that we had, we probably didn't even have 100 people there, or less than 100 people, but we're all talking about Mandy. And sooner, guess what? Mandy ends up being one of the films that's getting all the buzz at Sundance, came out of Sundance with some of the top critical reviews and one of the best Rotten Tomato scores, and then gets picked up for distribution, did a day and date release, which was, I think we would have hoped for like a wider theatrical release, but one of the things that was really interesting about it is it was almost a test of Legion M's ability to move the needle. How can we get that grassroots community, fired up about this movie and get the word out in a scenario where the distributor, their model is that they don't market it, right? So it's fully dependent on that. And I think, the movie's gone on to be a cult favorite. It ended up going into theaters, and then going into more theaters, which is super unusual for a day and date release.
Last time I checked, it was still playing. I don't know if it's still playing today.
Yeah.
They do like midnight showings, but it's. I really encourage anybody who's interested to read that article, and I just posted the link down there, because there are literally a million ways to make money or to invest. Yeah. They say the best way to make $1 million in film is to start with 2. And I think that is entirely true. Yeah. But when you look at the business models in the entertainment industry, a lot of people go, oh, okay, look, it cost this much to make and it made this much in box office. And they're like, that's it.
So they lost all their, they lost their money.
But that's not actually the way that the math works, because there are, dozens of different revenue streams, and there are multiple places in the value chain that you can invest. Like you mentioned Mandy and Jay and Silent Bob, for example, those are equity investments where we're some of the first money in. The Colossal and Bad Samaritan are P&A investments. Those actually, we're not even dealing with the producers, we're dealing with the distributors. And so the distributors are the ones that bought the film at Sundance. And so at that point, the producers are almost kind of like, they may have won or lost, but the distributor's game is just beginning.
Well, and a P&A investment is usually the last money in and the first money.
Yes. Yeah. So it's completely
different advantages.
Risk profiles. And what's great, and I think if you look at that article and look at what we've done, our track record over the 3 years, you'll see that it's testing this and titrating that. Now we're doing film distribution in the case of Memory, the Origin of Alien, the film that we bought at Sundance. We're partnered with Screen Media, and we are literally the distributors. And
50-50 partner. It's a JV deal.
It's a completely different business model than any of those. And we've got merch, and we've got live events, and now we've got, marketing services like we did with Tolkien. So a lot of this early stuff that we're doing is us gathering data. It's us showing like what is a Legion capable of doing in a model like this. And the other thing that I think is so important to recognize is also building, right? When you're building a startup, you're literally doing it brick by brick, right? We would love to be in on the next Star Wars coming out in December, but Disney has not taken our call yet.
Not yet. We're getting closer. We are getting some calls from cool people.
And so I think if you recognize that it's only been a little bit over 3 years, and 3 years ago, we were just like 2 guys jumping up and down with an idea. And, to be able to level up and work with Anne Hathaway, and then be able to level up and have an equity investment with Nick Cage, and now with Kevin Smith, you'd have an equity investment.
Buy a film at Sundance.
Yeah, it's really. I'm so proud of what we've done as a company, and I think that if you had told us 3 years ago that this is where we would be like, that would be amazing, but you're probably smoking the drapes.
As Jeff mentioned, and most of these deals are kind of like prototypes. We're kind of testing them, we're looking at them, we're evaluating. We have a part of our kind of strategy is something we call the method to the madness, where we've laid out kind of a phased approach. And in these early days, we're making small investments, we're testing things. The number one priority, frankly, for us right now is growth. Because what we've seen is the bigger the Legion gets, the more valuable we are. The bigger the impact is when we lean in. The bigger the interest level, the bigger the projects that we can gain access to. And, on that level, like, we're growing exponentially, but we're still in the early innings. I mean, our long-term goal is to unite 1 million entertainment fans. And if you think about that, over the long term, the average investor today puts like $500 in. So at scale, we'll have raised up to $500 million to invest in projects that have 1 million people emotionally and financially invested in. I mean, that's really a compelling, influential company. And, it's built into our logo, the M with the bar on it. That's our stated objective. And so, this is what we're doing. Every project that we get involved in is an opportunity for us to grow. Investing with Kevin Smith in the Jay and Silent Bob movie is, sure, it's a sound financial investment, but it also helps us grow. Investing in Tolkien or partnering with Fox Searchlight on Tolkien, it's an opportunity to grow. Going to Sundance and buying a film, it's another opportunity to grow. And so, all of these things, as Jeff mentioned, each one of them are brick by brick. We're building something that, we think over the long term has, inherent and really kind of aggressive value.
So you raised about $8 million from 16,000 investors. You want to grow to 1 million investors. So a long, long way to go. One question that came in is, what are some of your next goalposts? What are you trying to achieve next?
Well, I would say, for us, like Paul said, our number one focus is growth.
Yeah.
And our growth it's been exponential. We've been basically about doubling every year. And so that's like a really important milestone for us to be able to continue doing that. And that's obviously a difficult one because it gets higher and higher each year. But we're close to 20,000 investors now. And I think our target for the end of 2019 to continue that growth, that exponential growth, would be probably 24,000. So I think that we're in good shape in that department. And then I don't know if you want to, we've got a lot of, other kind of internal goals around.
Well, I would say, one other goal, we've done a lot in television or in movies and film, and we're really aggressive right now in television because we believe that, we've always said that we want to have a diversified slate. We've been, focused on, we've had great success in kind of getting involved in some cool projects in the film side of the business, but now we're also very interested in diversifying into television, and we think some of the opportunities in television not only present, it's a whole different scope of investing, so it'll be more kind of testing and prototyping, but I think it's also a unique opportunity to grow, where instead of just having one film that gets a theatrical release and then VOD and then goes through its life cycle, having a series that's potentially on for many years at a time, season after season and episode after episode, we feel like that could be something that our community could really impact. We're getting people out to theaters and they're bringing friends and family, but if it's tune in, or watch the show because this is a show that we're invested in, we think that moving the needle in that space will be equally, if not greater, our impact will be. But it's also an opportunity to grow that fandom over time, episode by episode.
Yeah.
So what has been your strategy to growth? How are you continually, is it just word of mouth? Is this a grassroots movement that's driving more people into it?
I would say that there's a lot of different components. Obviously, grassroots is part of it. We do advertising like on social media, and that's been a great way for us to target people. We go to Comic-Cons and Sundance Film Festival, and a lot of it, one of the wonderful things that we found is that when we can effectively have a project, like the projects that we've chosen are great, and we look at them from a number of different axes. One is, how can this project help us grow? And so, like, for example, when we, with Jay and Silent Bob, we can market that film, and a lot of times we can even get, money from various partners to help market it, and, and we can do stuff at Comic-Cons, and so it's really very holistic because we can do things that are helping us grow that also support the film. Probably the best example of that was Bad Samaritan, where our deal with that was we didn't actually write a check to them to invest in that film the way that you kind of think of okay, we're going to invest in the film. Instead, we did a whole bunch of activities in conjunction with the film. And it was going to Comic-Cons, it was doing panels, it was hosting our meetups, it was doing online stuff. And, it was all, designed to promote the film. And so we basically got credit for that, as an investment in the film that has the potential for upside. But these are all things that we would also want to do to grow the Legion. So a lot of that stuff is I think, very similar.
Yeah, the perfect scenario is when we can marry our marketing budget with an investment into a project like Jeff is describing. That's like the holy grail. And, increasingly now that we've proven ourselves, those opportunities present themselves.
Yeah. Yeah.
So one of the things that I've definitely seen, and it's kind of funny, I followed the Facebook page for Legion M, and my guy. So if anyone ever questioned whether or not you guys get people involved in Legion M, you need to only follow that Facebook page where the only thing you'll hear about is Legion M, be it, spotting the stickers on cars, be it, going to the different meetups, setting up the meetup.
Sharing their tattoo, their Legion M tattoo.
Yeah, Legion M I mean, it's pretty unbelievable, the fandom that's around it, which I think is really, really intriguing. So for people who want to invest, how can they get involved? How can they be a part of this and make the Legion more and more valuable?
Yeah, I mean, well, this is one of the things that I would say has exceeded our expectations. The people that are getting involved and either joining, they can join for free. And if they choose to invest, we never pressure anyone to invest. We want that to be their own independent decision. We also have a video called Watch Before Investing, as you like to do, Chris. We like to point out the risks involved, that, startup investing is inherently risky. The rewards are potentially high, but the risks are also there. And so we don't want anyone investing more than they can afford to lose, because statistically most startups go out of business. The ones that are successful and beat the odds, go on to achieve, greatness. And we believe that we're one of those companies, but, we still have odds against us. So people can go to legionm.com and they can learn more about us. They can sign up there. They can also go to WeFunder if they're interested in investing. We're at WeFunder.com/LegionM, right? Or you could just go in to explore the companies there, and we're usually one of the top companies based on the volume of investments that we're raising. But one of the things, as I mentioned earlier, is that we do fundamentally believe that having fun can be good business. That we want our community, we want them to get involved, join the community, make an investment or not, depending on what their goals are, but get involved. Come to Comic-Con, come to Sundance, get in our Facebook group and participate in the discussion. We're doing some really interesting things that allow the community to get involved, and and we have
ways that have never been done before.
Yeah, we have a lot of parents that have bought shares for their kids because their kids have an ambition to work in the industry, and this is a great way. We try to describe everything, like that link that talks about how we make money. It's all these things. Every investment we make will describe where we sit in the pot and how we invested and what our return will come from, and what do we need to do to make an impact, and why do we need to do it at X and X date? And all these things are kind of organic to us. We want our community to understand what we're doing, and we keep a running blog. If you go to legionm.com and you scroll down, I think you could scroll for days.
Oh yeah.
I mean, it's from literally since we started the company, we've been keeping track of everything that we do. And so if you ever want to just check it out and see oh, okay, did they ever come to my town, or could I participate? For the Tolkien premiere, I think we had 200
tickets.
Wow.
250 tickets that we gave away to our community to come and be there.
Then, 2 nights later, in Santa Fe, New Mexico,
oh, that's right,
we had, I think it was probably 50 or 75 free tickets to go watch the movie with George R.R. Martin at George R.R. Martin's Theater in Santa Fe, and then he did a Q&A afterwards. So you've got one of the most well-known, fantasy writers of our time talking about the impact that Tolkien had on him and his writing. It was fascinating. Again, 100% free.
Yep.
You just had to be in Santa Fe.
And that was all part of basically the publicity tour for that film. So Fox Searchlight was involved. They were super excited that we were able to put that together and get George R.R. Martin involved. In fact, they ended up, because we had the connection to George R.R. Martin, they ended up sending their private jet to George to bring him out to L.A. to do the Q&A for the premiere. And
somehow they forgot to pick us up on the private jet. Rent a car.
Right, yeah, exactly. But it is, it's fun. It literally, we live by this motto that, first and foremost, the company's a community. That's what we are. We're a community first before anything. And we believe that having fun can be good business. And, we're never extravagant in how we do things. Like coming to Sundance, you'll notice, when we're there, we don't have the most, posh lounge there. We have a very casual, fun lounge.
Very cool.
It's very cool.
But not posh.
Yeah, I think it's as one of the cooler lounges at Sundance. but it's not expensive for us to pull off. We have sponsors that help offset the cost. We get all the alcohol donated by sponsors, and all the food is there from Red Banjo Pizza. So it's like, you know, we're able to figure these things out, but the bigger our community gets, the easier it is to figure those things out. Because if you've got a community that's 5 times bigger, now all of a sudden your sponsorships are 5 times bigger, and you're paying for an even better, you know, experience. And so, you know, there's a lot, and like these premieres, like we'll give up our seat. Like to go to a premiere, we'd rather have someone from the community be able to go see the movie and experience that red carpet, you know, excitement. We'll be there, but we don't need to sit in a seat and watch the movie. Most of the time we've seen the movie. When we did Jay and Silent Bob, we did a lottery to send people to the set. They got to go visit the set and, you know, be there when they were in production down in New Orleans. And when they got there, Kevin surprised them with a walk-on role. They got to be in the movie. Just in, you know, obviously we can't promise everyone in the league that they'll be in the movie, but there is a way, and we should actually show this.
Oh yeah.
There is a way that we do sneak everybody into the movie, but for those people that won the lottery to go visit the set, they not only got to meet Kevin, they got to be in the movie. It's just, you know, it goes back to that whole thing that like doing that is good for the company, and it's good for our shareholders.
So I've had a few questions come in. I think it's interesting. I know it's a hard question to answer, but I'd love to just help people level set. So when you're thinking about investing, you know, the opportunity for an exit to see a return on your money, when you think about that for investors long-term, what does that look like? I know this is a mission project and a long-term project, but what does that kind of look like? How do you think about that?
Yeah, it's well, first of all, it's a great question, and we've spent a lot of time talking about the emotional part of being a shareholder, but it's also important to point out this is a business, right? You know, like for us, like with the having fun can be good business is an important part of our business model because of the fact that we're a fan-owned company, but we need to be a responsible business. We need to make money, right? Otherwise, you know, that's the only way that we're going to stay in business. So the more money we can make, the more financially successful we can be, the more great things that we can do. But, you know, I think for us, the way that I would kind of suss it out is we're a startup, right? So it's a total swing for the fences, right? I mean, if you were going to ask, like, what is the return on investment in Legion M? There's kind of a range, right? One end of the range is really easy to identify. That's pets.com, Webvan. It's the millions of startups that went out of business before you ever learned their names, right? And we always tell people, because we want to be very upfront. We don't want anybody coming in with mistaken.
Not a safe place for your like college tuition fund. Or
retirement
savings.
That doesn't benefit anybody if you lose your anyway. So that's like literally statistically the most likely outcome. So that's one end of the range. The other end of the range is, you know, you look at a company like Facebook, right? And I use that one because it's one of the biggest and most successful companies of all time. And so we're establishing a range, like, you know, why not?
That's the range.
And if you had invested in Legion M back when they were about our size, if you had invested in Facebook when they were about our size, we've got about a $25 million valuation / market cap, you know, right now. And so, you know, had you invested in Legion M or in Facebook when they were that size, literally your investment return would be measured in thousands. You know, the guy, Peter Thiel, who invested, it was a slightly lower valuation, but then he also sold at the IPO and he didn't benefit from that. You know, but he famously turned a $500,000 investment into $1 billion, right? And so it's, you know, if $100 investment in Legion M could conceivably be worth hundreds of thousands of dollars down the road. And that's obviously not likely to happen because that's the extreme, but even if it's a small fraction of the success, you know, then it's going to, it could be a potentially very large investment. And there's also nothing saying that we couldn't beat Facebook, right?
Well, one of the things that we look at, and you know, I don't know if we want to share any of the infographics here, but we do the kind of analysis because at the end of the day, the operative part of having fun can be good business is the good business part of it. And so if
I'm going to bring up an infographic here while he's talking.
Yeah. So if you look at statistically, if we're, we already know that we've got value, and our impact when we lean in on a film is worth a certain amount of money in box office. And so that's valuable. We've got, distributors and studios that are willing to, pay attention to that. And if we're using that for our own advantage, for our own movies, because we have movies that we're also producing ourselves, that's also really extremely valuable to us. But so is this on screen now?
Yes.
Okay.
Is this on screen, Chris?
Yes, it is.
Yep. So if you look at this slide, one of the things that we're showing here is at scale, when we've raised, when we've united 1 million investors, and if you look from the top down, if you look at the total funding, as I mentioned earlier, be up to $500 million in funding. But more importantly, if you look at the next line, this would be our social reach. So imagine 1 million investors. At that point in time, we probably have about 4 million free members. So it's a total community of 5 million people. If we make a post, Legion M makes a post, hey, this is our movie, you should go see it this weekend. And this is pie in the sky, infographic. So if everyone in our community shared that post would have 500 million impressions based on today's stats. So 500 million impressions coming from friends, right? Because these are people posting on their own personal social saying, hey, you know what? I'm an investor in this movie. You should go see it this weekend. They say that a recommendation from a friend is 4 to 10 times more valuable than an ad that was bought by a studio or someone else. So if you imagine that's over 1 billion. So let's value it. It's over 1 billion impressions. The cost to a studio to pay for that would be about $25 million. So if we have a film and we can save $25 million in marketing the film, I mean, a lot of people, Kevin Smith is one of them, says, the most expensive part about making a movie isn't making the movie, it's marketing the movie. And so if we can change the calculus on marketing movies, because we're all involved, and sharing a post on our social isn't like a big ask. It's actually something that we want to do because we're proud of the films that we're doing. But if you go to the next line, now we're measuring real financial data, right? So if everyone in that community went to the movie and brought 2 friends, again, we're not projecting or forecasting.
We're not expecting that everybody's going to do anything. Again, we're kind of establishing a range.
This is the potential that the community would have. So if everyone in the community, again, just to restate it, we know that won't happen, but if they did, if they all went to the movie with 2 friends, that would generate $121 million in box office for each movie. And so if you have the capability to introduce a movie that can generate $121 million in box office just with your own community, not including this scenario where we're talking about the potential, kind of assumes that no one else went to the movie except for friends of people in the Legion, which we also know wouldn't be true. But now all of a sudden you've got a blockbuster creation machine where as long as you're making good movies and the community is engaged, the value of this is, we believe, a really viable and good business.
That's really interesting.
Do we show the TV one? You want to?
Sure.
So you can also apply this similar logic to television. So I'm just going to skip to the bottom line there. So if, again, everyone in the community, let's say we've got a new series coming out, everyone's excited for it. It's been in production. We've taken people to the set. We've been marketing it. Now it's going to show on Hulu or wherever it's going. And we get everyone to tune in with 2 friends. That's 13 million people. That's almost as big as the first episode of Game of Thrones, which set records this year as being one of literally the biggest television shows in our history. So, again, this is showing the sheer potential of it. We know that, ultimately our measure will be how much of that potential is engaged and willing to support the projects that we're backing.
Yeah. And like he said, also it's an important distinction that I want to make. Our business model is not that we're going to create content and just our people are going to go see it.
Yeah.
But this is the case that we would make to, here's why you should let us invest in your movie.
Right.
And, you kind of hit the nail on the head early on, Chris, where, film and television entertainment is a lot like startups, right? In that there are very small sliver of deals that everybody wants to get in on, and
Right.
a really long tail of projects that are desperate for money and need your money. And so, yeah, and those are the ones that, and again, like they're not like there's a lot that you can do out here, but for us, the ability to be able to go in and say, look, you need money to finance this picture. You can either take it from a wealthy oil baron, or
Right.
you can take it from this company, and this is the potential impact that we think that we've got.
Yeah.
We think that if there's just ways that we can lean on the scale and do, using the existing business models that are out there, that it has the potential to be so powerful in so many different ways.
So we got an interesting question. I think you'll have a great answer to it. It's if and when Legion M becomes really successful, won't bigger players enter the market, and how would you respond?
So bigger players would enter the market in a kind of competitive way to unite a community similarly to what Legion M is doing?
I think that's what they're getting at, which I think is
it's a great question. To be honest, it's something that we expect. Like, I think I'll be shocked if we get all the way to 1 million investors and no one else is trying to do. It'll be flattering when they do. I would say, like, for us, Jeff and I, we're kind of an all boats rise thinkers that, like, we believe in what we're doing, and we feel like we're doing the best job that we can to do it and genuinely engaging our community. I know that there have been a couple other companies that have tried to do similar things and haven't had the success. And, I'm not going to, even pontificate about why they haven't had the same level of success. I think, we're focused on doing what we're doing, and, continuing to do it well. And, and to a certain degree, knowing that competition will ultimately come is good urgency for us.
Yeah.
It's why we're urgent in everything we do.
We don't have competitors yet, but we always feel like we're trying to beat them, and we're trying to outrun them. And I mean, one thing that I'll say about Legion M, that it's not like we have a product, right? That's novel. It's not like we invented a fidget spinner or like a new product that someone can easily replicate. Like I said, our DNA, like what makes Legion M work, goes back to our founding documents. It's the way the company is structured as a corporation. And this idea of bringing in a large number of small shareholders to your cap table and interacting with them and engaging with them is completely fundamentally different from the way that you normally build a company. Normally you want a couple big whale investors, because it's a lot easier to manage one person. And so, like, I think it would not be necessarily easy for an existing company or even an existing big name, because they would have to basically go back, start from scratch. Whatever they've already built, they would have to set that to the side and say, okay, I'm going to build this one differently. And like, I think that you need to have that done. Yeah, just partner with us, man.
Right.
We'll work with you. We're easy to work with.
If it's a major studio, I mean, one of the things that, like, because we've had these discussions, and it was similar when we were starting Moby TV. We had big established players are always kind of skeptical about sort of what you're doing, which is always really encouraging in a weird way. Like, it motivates us, but a lot of people would look at, like, our stated goal of 1 million investors, to most people in the industry sounds like a total nightmare. Like, and they will tell us that, wait, you want 1 million investors?
Yeah.
That sounds like a nightmare to me. And we'll say, yeah, it may sound like a nightmare to you, but that's nirvana for us. That's literally what we want. And as Jeff mentioned, we're engineering the company from day one to do that. So we're not like taking something and saying, okay, now we got to deal with the million. We're like, this is how we're growing and organically building the company in such a way so that we are engineered to support it. It's why when we think of the company, you know, as a community first, with like a big part of our IP and the assets that we have are not just our content and the projects we're investing in, but the tools that we're building.
Yeah.
The platform, Film Scout platform, the M-Pulse platform, all of these things, our Meetup Maker, all these things that we're building that allow us to engage with the community and to harness what we call harness the power of the community, how we can, you know, get everyone aligned and make it easy for them to share that post and make it easy for them and give them something cool to invite their friends to when they go see the movie on opening weekend. All these things we feel like are kind of, you know, really valuable to us.
Yeah, and it's worth pointing out that, you know, the only reason that we can do this is because the laws changed. The security, like it was this fundamental disruption. And like I tell people all the time, I don't know that we can take credit for being the first ones to think of a fan-owned company, but we did have the good sense and the good fortune to be around. And the day that became a real possibility, we were there and we jumped on it. And so,
timing.
Yeah, it is.
Timing
Well,
is everything.
we'll find out if it's good timing or not. I mean, no one's ever done this before, which is wonderful and, you know, terrifying at the same time. But it's, you know,
that's worth restating. I mean, so, you know, and it's one of the things that Jeff and I are fully transparent about this, that like what we're doing is extremely ambitious. In a lot of ways, it's even more ambitious than what we did with Moby TV, which was at the time extremely ambitious. But looking back at it, I think this is a bigger opportunity, and it's, you know, there's a lot of moving parts to it.
But it's a really powerful. So you mentioned Moby TV. We were the first ones to put live television on a cell phone. This was back in 2003 in the really super early days, like the very first color phones. But I think one of the things that's so unique about Legion M is, you know, we've had a front row seat over the past, you know, 20 years and seen the evolution of the media landscape and how the business models have changed and the technology has changed and the capabilities have changed. The one thing that has never changed, like that's going to continue, right? Things are continue to change. But the one thing that doesn't change is that at the end of the day, it's us, it's the people, it's our eyeballs and wallets that fuel the entire industry. And I think that's what's so powerful is no one can say, like, what is Netflix going to be in 5 years from now after all these new streaming entrants come in? And how is virtual reality going to reshape the landscape and all that sort of stuff? And nobody can answer those questions. But we do know that at the end of the day, there's going to be a consumer behind every mask that's paying for it or, you know, choosing what to watch and paying for it by watching commercials. And so having that direct link between those people and the company, I think puts us, in one of the most valuable and defensible points in the value chain.
Totally agree.
No, I agree with you guys, and I really appreciate you taking the time today. I think for me, as kind of an outsider, just looking at the business, you know, we have heard a lot of people say, like, how do you evaluate this business in comparison to any other business that's raising capital, a traditional tech company, a retail company, whatever it may be? And I think for me, it always comes down to what are the core differentiators of that company, right? And for me, it's influence through numbers and it's data through numbers. Basically, you're building this vast base of people who actually care about what you're building, who are paying attention, who are interacting with you, and they're providing you a ton of insights that no one else really has. And I think that's a really powerful way to think about investing in movies, because in very much the same way, how the venture capital model, only 1% of companies are funded by venture capitalists and 90% of those fail. It's kind of the same idea with movies, right? It's these big units investing with not a lot of actual data. And so if you start to let the crowd make decisions, you might end up with wiser decisions. So I think it's a really interesting investment opportunity from that perspective. If you get that, you invest for the long term with that vision for the company.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Yeah, we're hoping.
Well, as Jeff mentioned, we love what you're doing too. I think it's really informative, and You know, it's helping to evangelize the entire space. I mean, we believe there's opportunity for not just Legion M. Like when you talk about potential competitors, there's a lot of, kind of verticalization of what we're doing. Like you could do this in other industries. You could do this in specific genres of content. I mean, we want to be somewhat kind of diversified, so we're going after a specific, part of the entertainment industry. But I think, I wish there were more startup companies using equity crowdfunding that were thinking about it as strategically as they should be, because I think it's enabling for the average investor. I think it's empowering. I think ultimately, over the course of the next several years, investing in startups should be part of a balanced portfolio. It used to be stocks and bonds and maybe real estate, but stocks, bonds, real estate, and startups, that's a balanced portfolio. Just make sure that you do it with understanding the risks and have enough investments, that you're diversified. But this is where some of the best returns are. I mean, there's no secret why it was kept as this exclusive domain for so long. And now it's available. There's some great companies, even beyond MobiTV or Legion M and others. There are some great companies out there.
No, absolutely. And I do encourage people to go to King's Crowd, check out what we've written about Legion M in the past, what we continue to write about the organization, and to continue to learn and find other investment opportunities for themselves. But thank you very, very much for your time. I really appreciate it. Congrats on all this.
Thank you so much for having us. And thank you for everybody who tuned in. We really appreciate it.
Yes, really appreciate it. Tthank you, everyone. Have a wonderful day.
Onward and upward.
Thank you.
Take care, everyone. Good night. Bye.